Okay, folks, this is John Fraser with the New Energy Show, newenergynewsshow.com, and we've got Michael Strizki on the line with us today. Michael served as a founder of the Hydrogen House Project, served as a project engineer for over 16 years with the Office and Research and Technology in the New Jersey Department of Transportation, where he developed renewable energy technologies. And he was one of his most noted projects was the first use of fuel cells in the DOT's variable message signs. Other projects included Project Power Commute, an electric vehicle station, car project, and 2 fuel cell vehicles, the New Jersey Venture and the New Jersey Genesis. And in July of 2000, he took a position at the Millennium Cell in Eatontown, New Jersey, where he completed a world range record with the New Jersey Genesis, a distance of over 400 miles on a single refueling. In 2003, he served as a project engineer for both the Peugeot fuel cell fire engine and the Duffy fuel cell electric boat in January 2004. He also joined the team at Advanced Solar Projects as a project engineer for photovoltaic installations. In 2006, Mr. Strizki converted his own home, to run on solar hydrogen power, which included a hydrogen fueling station. And this home serves as a flagship prototype for his company, Strizki Systems, which designs and installs clean and renewable solar energy systems for homes and businesses. And he's even installed systems in the homes of some of the world's most famous celebrities. He has also designed a revolutionary aluminum solar panel mounting rack that is easy to install on both rooftops and ground, cost-effective, and uses less materials than most competitors. And his company, Gen Mounts, has expanded rapidly, selling these mounting racks along with GPS-controlled pole-mounted solar trackers through the U.S. Mike Strizki he's relaunching his nonprofit organization under a new name, the Hydrogen House Project, and he envisions the organization becoming a beacon for renewable energy worldwide, conducting research, development projects with the latest in solar, hydrogen, fuel cell, and other clean technologies. The organization will share its achievements with the world through public education, student internships, private and public partnerships, and tours of the Hydrogen House Project headquarters in Hopewell, New Jersey. So without further ado, I have Mike Strizki here on the line with us. So appreciate you taking some time out of your schedule to join us.
Yeah, no problem, John. Always glad to get the message out to as many people as we can. Obviously, energy rules the world, and he who controls the energy controls the planet. And if I have my druthers about me, energy will be free, something that the big oil companies and a lot of the tax entities don't want to hear. But if we don't cure this disease, there's not going to be a future for our children, our grandchildren, or even ourselves.
Right. Exactly. Well, I agree with all those things, and the dogma, what you could say, whatever is being fed to us right now is, let's do green, let's do renewable energy. But everything that I see out there says, hey, let's use batteries, let's use all of these projects or products that have to be that get used up, and then you have to buy them again 3, 5, 10 years down the road, and pretty significant cost, right?
Yeah, I mean, the business plans for these battery installations are buy batteries, buy more batteries, and more batteries, and destroy the planet at the same time. People have no idea what a lithium mine looks like. That's basically scorched earth when they're done. And there are mountains of these batteries that are sitting in Afghanistan. They're not really recyclable, and they just go back as toxic chemicals and hazardous waste.
Okay.
Unlike hydrogen, forever. It's as good today as 100 million years from now. It's 80% of every molecule in the universe, and it powers our planet. Basically, the sun provides us all our food and our existence here on this planet. There's no existence without sunlight, and hydrogen creates that sunlight.
That's right. Okay. Well, just to give you an idea, kind of some of the things I wanted to talk about today is, I don't know if any of our visitors or watchers on here have ever thought about becoming self-sufficient, maybe getting a piece of land, I don't know, anywhere, whatever it is. I mean, I thought eventually of maybe having 20 to 40 acres at some point, you know, getting onto the property, having some sort of a workshop, shed, pole barn type of thing, and you know, eventually growing my own food, having you know, home for chickens and making our own eggs and maybe a few animals for meat, that kind of stuff. And you know, what do they say? SHFT, if the poop hits the fan, and you know, all the systems crash, you know, at least you've got the ability to, you know, take care of your family and maybe a handful of people, you know, that are there. But so what I wanted to, my thought process was we have to have running water, because I think most of the, you're going to hear about this more and more, that without any a fresh type of water source, there's going to be, you know, most of the wars coming down the road, I think, are going to be fought over water rights, who gets water and those types of things, right?
Yeah, the equation is pretty simple. He who controls the water, the energy, the food, and the communications rules the world. That's the difference between first world countries and third world countries. They will never let the common man have control of any of those things, because then they can't control the people. So it's going to be a very hard struggle to, you know, have free energy, to have clean water. If you look at what's going on the planet just in the last few years, I mean, Texas has despoiled so much of their water by this fracking. I've witnessed it firsthand a couple of weeks ago when I traveled down to Texas, and it's an enormous problem. The rivers are drying up. The weather patterns are changing due to global warming. You know, crops are drying up. If you looked at the Colorado River Basin, you know, it's empty. There are docks that are sitting miles from the river because they're so low. Lake Travis in Texas is basically a mud puddle now. The groundwater that they do have, they've poisoned by putting all these fracking chemicals right back into it again. So the most precious resource that America has, we've basically destroyed, you know, for a little bit of energy. And, you know, we're overlooking the big nuclear ball in the sky that will provide everything we could ever possibly want. But we won't embrace things that actually cure the disease. And the stuff that I do is all about curing the disease, not treating it forever.
Okay. Yeah, I agree with that as well. So in addition to having a piece of land or maybe being self-sufficient, I guess we have to really find some sort of property that has a spring or water that actually originates on the property, so that the people can't dam that up. It's actually your source. And then also, I think
one of the things that you have to look at is, you know, in order to know where we're going, you have to look at where we've been. You have to look at where we were before, you know, running water in households, and before we had, you know, energy from coal or oil or, you know, lamps. And that's the place that we have to go back and look to, you know, things like passive solar. We have to look at, you know, water coming from rainwater. I mean, if you go to Bermuda, you notice that almost all of the water in Bermuda is provided from rainwater, and that water comes down and hits the lime roofs, and it goes directly down from the gutters into a cistern, and the inside of the cistern is coated with lime. This prevents the growth of algae, and this is, you know, it goes through a particulate filter, and this is what the people on these islands drink. And it's very old, stupid technology, but it works. We forget what it's like. We have to have something modern and consume tons of energy in order to make things work, and it's not like that. You know, my stuff combines the old and the new to make something that works the best. If we keep doing things the way we're doing it, you know, we're going to end up where we're heading, which is to hell in a handbasket.
Yeah.
You know, stupidity is keep doing the same things and expecting a different result. Anybody thinks that global warming isn't real, just look around. For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. The carbon levels in the atmosphere, greenhouse gases, are not going up for no reason. And, you know, between China and India going into the machine age, you know, the world is out of control between destroying the oceans and, you know, and destroying the air that we breathe. Mm-hmm. You know, the plankton provides most of the air on the earth, and we've decimated the oceans. That Gulf disaster that we had is 3% of the world's air when they sunk the oil to the bottom of the Gulf. Mm-hmm. You know, they want to keep us as sheep to be fleeced, you know.
Exactly. Well, I see, I was actually watching a video by a gentleman who has a website called Gasland. gas line, really talking about the fracking issue and problem that's going on in all over the world in shale areas. And it's just horrible. They're suppressing a lot of these stories and people's stories of they've had their home and water sources for 50 to 100, couple hundred years, and now all of a sudden you have fuel, a fuel source, a gaseous fuel coming out of their faucets they can light on fire. It's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, there's no way the regulatory agencies can ever keep track of what's happening to tens of thousands of wells all over the place. That's the problem with this stuff. Mm-hmm. They basically come in, they extract as much as they can, they despoil the earth, they leave behind, and then they're off to the next site. Mm-hmm. It's impossible to have any kind of regulation, and they love it that way.
Right.
So basically they're decimating, like I said, the natural resources of a particular area and leaving the people there to hold the bag or to die of cancer.
Yeah. Well, all these guys got together, in mid '05, mid '06, and got together and got themselves completely removed from the Clean Air Act and the Clean Water Act, so we can't even know what's going in the ground without being sued for something like that. But anyway, that's just very disturbing. My wife is very hypersensitive to EMF, so one of the other reasons we wanted to look at maybe moving out is getting away from as many of the microwave transmission towers. Here in the Tulsa, Oklahoma area, we have within 5 miles. There's what was the number, Kelly? There's like 400 radio or transmitting stations with over like 1,200 transmitters. So 400 towers, 1,200 transmitters within a 5-mile range of here. And all that stuff is just, causing all kinds of disease. So one of the things I think some of the viewers and listeners would be looking at is, how do you disconnect from all these public services? How do you get rid of the electric? How do you get rid of we can talk about the water and get away from fluoride, chloramine, and chlorine, and all that stuff. And then how about heating and cooling? How do you eliminate the natural gas or propane, with tanks on the site to have heating for your cooking and maybe even heating fuel, outside of, building practices that are more green? So we were hoping that you might be able to, talk a little bit about, if I wanted to build a site or build a home somewhere on a piece of land, what types of things would we put in? Maybe even utilizing your technologies to eliminate.
You have to look at the natural resources that are available where you're at. Obviously, sun exposure varies between, Alaska and Texas widely. So the amount of energy you can get from the sun. So does the amount of wind energy or hydroelectric or geothermal. So you have to select what available resources there are where you are at and use them to your best advantage. Most people don't consider the ground under their feet a source of energy, but it is. There's a technology called geothermal, which I use to heat and air condition my house, which saves me about 70% on my energy consumption. Most of people's energy consumption is either heat, air conditioning, or both. So if the ground below your feet, almost anywhere in the continental U.S., below about 3.5 feet is 56 degrees year-round, now you have a huge heat sink that stores energy. So the geothermal in my house basically has a mile of copper tube buried 6 feet underground, about a mile of it. I circulate the refrigerant from my air conditioning system through those coils. I pick up the 56-degree ground temperature. I bring it into the house. I run it through a compressor, and I air condition my house for free. The energy that's picked up in the house, the hot gas, now goes in to heat my hot water. So I have 170-degree unlimited hot water when the air conditioning system is running. When I've extracted the heat, then I put the gas back into the field, and the process starts again. Okay, so I'm extracting. Most people's air conditioners are running against whatever it is outside. If it's 110 degrees outside, you've got to go from 110 degrees down to 70. In my house, I'm going from 56 degrees to 70. Mm-hmm. So basically, I'm not making anything. So that's where your energy savings is. Right. And I'm using hot water besides. Now, the geothermal has a reversing valve in it that provides heat as well. So during the winter time, the reversing valve turns the evaporator into the condenser and the condenser into the evaporator. And what that does is it extracts now heat from the ground, so it makes the ground colder, and it makes my house warmer. I got to bring up a 12-degree differential with the heat. I'm not going from 0 to 70. I'm going from 56 to 70. So that's where the huge energy savings is in the heating cycle. Now that aside, lighting in the house is about 18% of your load. If you're using incandescent lights and you change over to LEDs, you've cut about 90% of that energy usage out just by using LED technology. The next thing you got to look at is the building envelope. You want to build basically a passive solar house to begin with, so you make the most of the heat and cool. I'm not going to go into all the details on how you do that here, but the net result is you build yourself a thermos where you basically control what heat comes into the house and what heat goes out of the house by either using devices that control when things come on and when things come off, or you control it through efficiency. So, I mean, the science is very simple and very stupid, but most people overlook the obvious.
Right. Okay. And so, let's see. I had a couple of different questions here. Now, if you were to try to redo everything over again, if you knew what you knew now and you were starting from scratch, and you've tried a lot of different technologies, where would you start? If you built a home off grid, or you found a piece of land, you're going to build a passive solar design, what systems would you put in? Like, let's say, for example, you want to do not a pole barn, but a frame structure with maybe, let's say, straw bale as your insulation. So I know a lot of these straw bale homes don't have to have heating or cooling, so you wouldn't need as much energy to increase or decrease that. What would you use with some of your systems to energize, give electricity to the home and
I mean, I like the very simple designs. I like basically a square building with a flat roof.
Mm-hmm.
You put your photovoltaics up on the roof. You use the roof to collect all of the water, run that into a cistern to provide your water, run it through one of my hydro units to do the purification. I mean, it's very simple stuff. But by having a square house, pretty much all the spaces inside the house can be used very efficiently. In addition to that, the southern-facing side, I like basically thermal walls that we'll put ceramic paint on the outside to reflect the sunlight. We put 45-degree overhangs in to only take sun in during the low horizon in the sky. I mean, there's lots of different things that you can do, but the building envelope is first. The renewable is the last piece of the equation. So once you've gotten the house to use the least amount of kilowatt hours, and you've used as many natural resources to heat and cool the house naturally, then that's the time to go to the renewable. Like I said, my house uses 10% less energy than the average home of the same size, and it's done basically through a combination of conservation and controls, super efficient air conditioning and heating systems. It's done through a whole bunch of automated systems in the house. And so once you've done those things and you've gotten your house fairly efficient, you've got the kilowatt hours down, you've used the proper equipment, then you go to the renewable to take out the end of it. So what we do is we put in 1.5 times more solar than the house needs to cover the loads. We use the 50% to make hydrogen, store it in stupid old propane tanks, and then put it through a fuel cell back to the and put it back online when we need it. The systems are designed to only run when they're needed, and they're designed to run at a steady state between 2 and 8 hours. So you get the maximum amount of life out of the fuel cells, your expensive equipment. So, the automakers are doing it all wrong. The automakers are building total fuel cell vehicles when they should be building fuel cell hybrids like the Prius with a fuel cell. Mm-hmm. And the reason they're doing that, you should do that, is because it gives you a backup to the backup. By having a small battery system as well as the fuel cell and ultracapacitors, you have the cheaper technologies doing the heavy lifting, and you have the amp hours coming in at a steady rate through the fuel cell. Mm-hmm. So this is really the trick to making the most economic system possible by mixing these technologies. Okay.
And over the years, I mean, you've been ahead of the technology, ahead of the curve on this hydrogen thing for so long. I mean, the most publicly visible person that I've seen doing this in a big way. How'd you handle all the naysayers? How'd you handle all the people that say, it takes too much energy to produce it, and hydrogen doesn't put out as much as gasoline or propane? And how'd you keep going with all that?
I took my cue from people like Tesla, Edison. Basically, you're going to take a lot of arrows when you're the pioneer. And, you've got to be able to do it first, and then you worry about making it cost effective.
Mm-hmm.
I look at things. I'm an inventor, a mechanic, an engineer, a plumber, a little bit of everything. And I can tell right away whether things are going to work or not. The reason I built the hydrogen house was the fact that I know it would work after building the cars. Why can't we? I see 10 levels ahead, and I'm able to put them all together. And that's what makes things unique, and it makes them work. People look at fuel cells, people look at batteries, and they see the faults. I look at them and I see what I can do to fix the problems that they have. And that's exactly what I've done. I've fixed the problems with the high outputs coming out of the batteries by putting in the ultracapacitors. I fixed the problem with the batteries by limiting the rate of discharge to 15% and then using the fuel cell to back up the batteries. So, and then, had renewables both from solar and wind go into the mix to offset the amount of energy that's needed to be pulled from the grid or other sources. So we use what's naturally there. And I pioneered something called seasonal storage. I make all my hydrogen in one season. So the spring, I make all my hydrogen. I'm done for the year. I backfeed to the grid between June and September. They pay me. I'm neutral in the fall, and then I bring the hydrogen in from what I made the year before, from the spring before. So it's a full circle, and every year I'm making more hydrogen than I actually use.
So in your market, they actually pay you for any overages to the grid, because in our markets, in some markets, they just zero out your bill, and anything over and above that, they don't pay you.
Well, the laws have to change.
Yeah. Okay. And where do you see things moving forward relating to a larger presence of hydrogen in the world? What are some of the new technology you've seen coming out, people are putting forth?
The technologies have always been here. The problem has always been mass production. We've been faced all the years that I've been doing this with a chicken and egg syndrome. Well, if we bring in the fuel cells, where's the hydrogen? Mm-hmm. If we bring in the hydrogen, where's the fuel cells? Well, the answer's pretty much been answered in the last couple of months by Toyota coming out and saying that we're ditching Tesla, we're breaking our deal with Tesla and batteries to do fuel cells. Not 2 weeks later, Honda came in and said we're eliminating our whole EV line to pursue fuel cells for marketing products. You had companies like Apple that are building solar hydrogen data centers down in North Carolina. So all these people now are jumping on the bandwagon. Just a week ago, General Electric announced they're building a fuel cell plant in Rochester, New York. So we're watching the world change right before our eyes. I never thought that I'd see a hydrogen economy in my lifetime, but the cost of cheap renewable has changed everything. When I built my house, the solar panels were $10 a watt. Now you can buy it for 57 cents.
Wow.
So that's a huge decrease in the cost of the renewable, the devices that capture the sun's energy. And we've also sold some pretty substantial efficiency gains. So all the moons are aligning to make this be a real business. Like I said, Toyota put the chicken out there. Now everybody's rushing to do the eggs.
Right. Okay.
So that's where we're at right now, and we're going to see a lot in this sector now. I think it's going to be unstoppable, something that they've been able to quench before. A lot of the things, if you've ever been to my website, you've seen that I have small hydrogen generators and cell phone units and things of that nature. We're putting hydrogen in the hands of the consumer, and we're going to make them demand it. That way we're going to take the powers that be out of the equation. They're not going to be able to stop something that people have a demand for.
That's awesome. That's really great. You're pioneering all that. Now, transitioning to using some of your technologies, or let's say the current technologies where you go to like a wholesale solar, places like that. They want to push a big solar system. They want to put whatever solar system you need, size for your home, plus a battery bank. Of course, you choose what length of life batteries you want to use. Of course, and they get very astronomical there. But from my understanding is when the batteries are topped off,
you're done.
You're done, right? So the charge inverter, the charge controller shuts off the connection from the cells.
It's just like the windmills.
Mm-hmm.
When there's no demand from the grid, the windmill shuts down.
Right.
The nice
So,
thing about hydrogen is basically you can keep making it from excess energy, and it's the cost of a propane tank.
so you're taking all the excess energy when these inverters are shutting off, you're keeping them running, and you're using an electrolyzer to high pressurize,
Yep.
make hydrogen.
We're making hydrogen and medical grade oxygen, both commodities that are valuable.
So in one of your videos before, I saw you were venting oxygen off to the air. So now you're keeping it or doing something else with it?
Well, it can be kept. I have a lot of people requesting it for triages for medical. I don't know if you saw the Hydra units that we have on my website, but these are basically portable power plants and water purification units that are used in disaster situations to provide drinking water for hospitals. It's looking at providing power for that hospital.
Okay. Yeah, I saw a couple of those things on your website there. And then what about let's see, one of the other some of the naysayers were talking about. It costs, if you think about a gallon of gas is $3.50 to $4 a gallon around the country, and if you really go look into how much energy it takes to get a gallon of gas and create it and refine it and everything.
Yeah, well, correct.
Right. So the same negative stories as they say, well, it costs too much energy to make hydrogen. It costs a heck more money to actually make gasoline.
Yeah, that's interesting that you bring this up, and so is everybody else, the naysayers. At the end of the day, free is free. Okay? So, efficiency doesn't matter only when you're paying for it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? So, if the energy that you're getting is free, what the hell do you care what it costs?
Exactly.
You're buying equipment. Fuel prices will go up and down. The cost of sunshine is never going to change.
Mm-hmm. Unless they put some sort of dome over your house and control that somehow.
Well, then they're starting to get into certain inalienable rights.
Right.
And I think they have much bigger problems at that point.
So, okay. So after looking at your website, looking at what you currently have now, looks like a solution for, like, if we wanted to build an off-grid place, we would want to use maybe your Joule box or a version of that to run our home.
Either the Joule box or the H2Go unit.
Mm-hmm.
And remember that there's a federal tax incentive of up to 40% on that.
Okay, so I don't know for 2,000 square foot home. I don't know how would you size something like that? How would you know what size of a Joule box unit to buy? And
it all comes down to what the kilowatt hours is, where it's located, how much renewable. It's an engineering project. Unfortunately, it's not a one size fits all. It's basically got to be engineered. Okay. So we have to know what the draw is, what renewables available, how much storage you want to have, and we size the systems accordingly.
Okay. So basically, to do that, we need to, like you said, just figure out.
We go through a loads list.
Mm-hmm.
What are you running? How long are you running it for? And is it going to be day or night? If we can run as many loads, like in my house, I run everything during the day when I don't have to take the loss in making it in hydrogen.
Uh-huh.
So I run my swimming pool pump. I run my hot tub. I actually cool the house a few degrees cooler in the daytime so that instead of the air conditioning running 6 hours at night, it's only running 3.
Okay.
Okay. Anything that I run, after the sun goes down, basically has a higher energy consumption rate. You want to use the free when you can.
Right.
And that goes into, sizing the system. It's not only it's how you use it, it's also when and how much of it you use.
So you basically have to change.
So we do a lot of what's called load shifting, and a lot of that is all done automated.
Okay. But,
so you don't even have to think about it.
But for like a husband-wife team, something like that, instead of doing your laundry, in the evenings, or you're switching just the way you do some things to different times.
Yeah, a lot of the washers have timers on it. You push a button, and between 2 and 10 o'clock, when you have the maximum amount of sun exposure, it comes on automatically, and it's done.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And out of curiosity, like, how much do you have, like a basic Joule box, an entry-level kit?
We do. We have a basic Joule box, and then we can configure it any way you want.
Okay. And what's the ballpark?
So the Joule box will run anywhere from about 22,000 to 65, depending on what it's outfitted with.
Okay. Our data connection just dropped down, so that was. Would you mind saying that one more time?
Yeah, it's anywhere between 22,000 for the low end Joule box up to 65, which is a higher end.
Okay. And so you could even start with the lower end and then add additional capacity as you expand out.
Absolutely. You can start off with, solar. You can start off with ultra caps. You can start off with batteries. You can start off with electrolyzers and fuel cells, and then you can increase the size of all those components if your demand is higher.
Okay.
You can add water purification as well.
Okay. And is there a way to, outside of just giving you a call and setting up a time to do something like that, is there a way to, go on some sort of a, website or a spreadsheet or something and put some of that stuff in to get a, ballpark idea of what size we'd need?
Typically what I'm doing now is I have people call me that are interested in doing this stuff, and I basically go out to their houses and I do a full energy audit. There's no sense guessing. What people will need as a jewel box can vary as much as people's taste in houses. And I always go in as part of what I do, and I do an energy audit first and grab all the low-hanging fruit before we get to the renewable.
Okay.
It's going to be far more cost-effective. So I basically do that as a consulting basis. I go in and I'll re-engineer the house and give them a picking list from 1 to 10 on what measures are and what the cost benefit is going to be before we get down to the jewel box and the renewables.
Okay. And then what about cooking? I think at some point I'd seen that you were doing some sort of conversion.
You can cook with hydrogen. You get a 15% loss, which is great. Hydrogen cooks at 10,000 degrees. You're looking at propane at around 2. You have to make a special stove. I've modified all my stuff at home in order to accept hydrogen. The properties are a little different. But yeah, you can absolutely cook with hydrogen. So, I've actually had a lot of inquiries from a lot of third world countries to do hydrogen cooking because that's a huge use of fuel in those particular areas.
So you just pull, some of the hydrogen off the tanks as you need them to cook and do.
And you burn it. When you burn it, you get water.
Okay.
So you can heat your house with hydrogen and not have any carbon dioxide. You'll never die of fumes.
Right. And then if you were going to heat your house, cook with hydrogen. What about like backup, water heating and stuff like that? Would you use solar, like a solar water heater type of a combination with hydrogen as a backup?
Depending on where you're located, there are a couple of different options for that. I've just come up with, it's not on my website yet, is a solar heat pump, a small mini split. So basically, when you own a house, you only want to heat and air condition the rooms you're in. A lot of these houses I'm going to now to do energy audits, you have 2 people living in a 6,000 square foot house, and they're living in 2 or 3 rooms of the house.
Right.
Yet they're heating the whole and air conditioning the whole place. So we go in and we basically put in mini splits, so they're only heating and air conditioning the select rooms they're in. Plus, we have solar mini splits that will do it all off of that with a fuel cell backup. So we can do total off-grid air conditioning and heating as well. The technologies are getting greater and greater. The problem with the traditional homes is you're getting a lot of loss through the ductwork. And a lot of the ductwork usually runs in unconditioned space.
Okay.
So by using these mini splits, you're basically applying your heat and air conditioning directly in the room that you're going to need it with no loss in the ducts because you don't create the energy till it hits the evaporator on the wall.
Okay. So you're talking about kind of those smaller like split systems you got.
Yeah, they're called inverter units.
Inverter units.
But I have one that I've modified with geothermal and solar and a fuel cell. Okay.
Awesome. Well, anything else you want to tell our viewers and listeners today?
They can visit my website, hydrogenhouseproject.org. They can feel free to email me any questions. They can follow me on Facebook. We have a Facebook page on a documentary they're doing on my life called Keys to the Cage. So if they want to check it out, add a comment, whatever. Consumers need to vote with their pocketbooks if they expect to get change. That's the only thing that people listen to or the government listens to.
Right. Okay.
I give the graduating address at Rutgers, and the students ask me, well, I can't do what you can do. Well, everybody can do something. 1 + 1 + 1 makes an army. And in order to make this army, it's going to take all of us, and it's going to take using our heads, our power of vote, and our pocketbooks to make it happen. We got to lead by example. That's the problem. These kids today, don't have any leadership in life.
Yeah.
So we need to provide them that leadership and that guidance to basically do the things that people tell you are impossible. If I stopped doing things or creating things because people told me they were impossible, I'd never do anything.
Right. Well, I think all those things that people told me that I couldn't do is fuel for my fire to move forward and do them. So
the only thing that limits you is yourself.
Mm-hmm. Well, I appreciate your time today, and I'd like to say to our listeners that, with the cost of utilities soaring, with no end in sight, and with resources and energy continuing to increase, pulling out oil out of the ground, I'd urge you to do something today to lessen your carbon footprint on this planet. Start paying attention to what's happening around us in terms of the elite controlling the financial systems, food production, energy generations, and like I said before, mark my words that, water shortages and water wars will be probably the next, they're starting right now, that wars are going to be fought over clean water. And I would recommend, as Mike was talking about, starting to think about solar, hydrogen-centric ways to live, finding ways to unplug from the grid, finding ways to lower your EMF bombardment into your body, start drinking fresh water far away from fracking sites and shale-based areas around the world, and start making a difference at an individual level, and stand up against areas and communities that make it illegal to get off the grid. Continue to watch our channel, subscribe to Mike's channels, and we look forward to seeing you guys get off the grid too. And anything we can do to help you or Mike, just reach out and contact us, and we'd be happy to help you. So again, thank you, Mike, for your time today.
All right, great. Have a good one.
Okay, you take care. Okay, bye-bye.